and welcome, Patriot Radio News Hour. I'm Joe Jaquint, CEO of the Patriot Trading Group, and our toll-free number, 800-951-0592. The website at allamericangold.com, and it is the last day of January, and already an incredible January. We haven't seen a stock market like this since 2009. My guess is before this year is over, we may not have seen a stock market like this, maybe ever. I will say it's the last day, so hopefully, let's be positive. Hopefully, February will get better, but I'm not that confident that is going to be the case. But hey, we'll pretend that hopefully it will be. I'm joined, as I always am, with my partner Jason Walker in Colorado. And Jason, before we get to you, just a program update of the Stream 1360 KHNC. It's down right now. We are working on it. We actually got hit with a cyber attack yesterday. We were fending it off, working on it. We thought we had it fixed, but I'm hopeful that Brian's going to be able to get us back up and running. But Jason, you know what? It's funny because January was already a record for the radio station as far as minutes streamed in a 30-day period, and we were getting ready to crest 1 million minutes in a single month. That's just how big and powerful KHNC has gone. Just to give you an idea, that's 16,666 hours. Like I said, on Sunday, I want to say about midday on Sunday, the attack started coming in, and we're working on it.
That's right, Joe. And then the minutes that we tracked was on Friday, the 28th. So we still had 3 more days of January to add streaming minutes. So we beat the previous December by thousands of minutes. It's pretty incredible. It's quite the growing audience that we have here at KHNC.
Yeah, it's just a great thing. It really, really is. To put it in perspective, even go back to August, we were about 350,000 minutes. So to think that we've almost tripled the amount of minutes being streamed in less than 6 months. It's pretty impressive.
Especially since we probably have an estimated maybe 10-to-1 terrestrial listeners in their cars, Joe, versus the streaming.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That's huge.
That's just the power of 1360 and why we've got so many people inquiring about advertising and all the rest here, because your message is going to get heard. That's for sure. Speaking of being heard, we have got a great show for you today. We've been waiting and waiting. I mean, years in the making. This is nowhere on the mainstream media. Glenn Beck covered it better than anybody in regards to what the central bank did and did not do. The Freedom of Information Act for the central bank is 2 years. The Federal Reserve, the central bank, actually went to the Supreme Court. And said to the Supreme Court, this is after the bailouts, and said to the Supreme Court, hey, I know that the law is 2 years, but we just, this is sensitive stuff, and we just can't allow, we need more time. So, of course, they convinced the Supreme Court, so the Supreme Court said, okay, 10 years from now, you've got to tell the truth. You've got to release to everybody what you did. Jason, that 10 years just expired.
Yeah, that the FOIA request was 2010. It was fought in court until 2012, and that's when the Fed told the Supreme Court, well, it's too sensitive, we need 10 years. Just ended. And not only did Glenn Beck cover it well, Brian sent me an email in the morning, yesterday morning, Sunday. I was already looking at some of this, and then he released a short video, about 12 minutes that we're going to play of it, and he goes through the whole thing. And Joe, I looked everywhere, even the people that went with the FOIA request, Levy Economics Institute. There's no information about this, the results of this. Glenn Beck got his FOIA, he's reading it. These are facts about what these guys did. And now the speculation, Joe, and I won't ruin it, but now because this is a fact, the speculation of what happened around the repo market in 2019 is running rampant, at least in the Blaze and Glenn Beck. So it's Glenn Beck. I'll say this. Glenn Beck really, I got soured on him in 2016. He did a lot of really dumb things. I think his Blaze was suffering. He was laying off people. He was even maybe trying to shop it to sell the Blaze. But he has gotten back to like his Alex Jones status where he's doing really good work, Joe. And this is one of his best.
Yeah, and the FOIA request, for those of you that don't know, that's the Freedom of Information Act. And again, really, I'm not surprised. You sit there and they try to censor Joe Rogan, right, who had, Dr. Malone as an example, a incredibly respected doctor right up until he didn't agree with Anthony Fauci. This is more news that hasn't been out. Just how bad was it? What did they really do? And what does that mean for the next crash that's coming? You're not going to want to miss it. Hang tight. We'll be right back. Welcome back here, Patriot Radio News Hour, 800-951-0592. I'm going to try to talk real quick here because I want to get this all in. The Freedom of Information Act, all these years later, finally comes out, and not shockingly, the cheerleading station, aka CNBC, who's supposed to be all things financial, all things money, doesn't want to touch this thing with a 10-foot pole because, well, let's face it, the realities are these guys are a bunch of liars, they're a bunch of crooks, and they've got your wealth at risk. And if I know a lot of people, Joe's just trying to scare us and this and that. Well, here it is, right out here, right out in the open. What they've been doing and what they've been up to, far more deceitful, Jason, than any of us were really led to believe.
Yeah, this is going to connect a whole lot of dots for people who've been listening to this station and the Patriot Radio News Hour, and it's scary because the scope of what's going on in this world, and you can connect things like Ukraine to stuff like this and cryptocurrency. So let's just play it, Joe, so we can react to it. So Jack, go ahead and throw this thing in. Let's let the audience listen.
We told you that the Great Reset is the plan. The news on the Great Reset is breathtaking today. And the White House announced yesterday that they are going to get rid of Bitcoin and all cryptocurrency. It's got to go. It's got to go. IMF is going the same way. Well, why? Let me give you some numbers that have just been FOIA'd and released this week. Why this is not the number one story in the world, I don't know. But I haven't seen this reported anywhere. The Fed has a 2-year waiting period on information. So they can't tell you. You can't ask, and they can't tell you 2 years. They do something, and then you have to wait 2 years to say, what did you just do? Okay? Then it has to be FOIA'd. Well, 2 years, 2012, 2 years went by after 2008 to 2010, and they were FOIA'd. Tell us what you did. Well, they fought it, and they went all the way to the Supreme Court, and it was, the Fed said, we need 10 years. We need 10 years. It's very sensitive, 10 years. 10 years are up, so it's been FOIA'd. Let me give you what they did. Now, here's what they said they did. Do you remember the Tea Party started with TARP? because we were so outraged that it was $787 billion. We were so outraged, almost $1 trillion to bail out these banks. Are you kidding me? I want you to remember that. $787 billion to bail out TARP. Less than $1 trillion, the bailout for all of the banks. And we said, what are you doing? How could we possibly do that? Then the stimulus package, the Reinvestment Act, was $750 billion. So $1 trillion, what, 6? $1 trillion 5. That's what they said they spent. Then the Fed said, we have to, purchase things like mortgage bonds. So we're just adding money, but it's on our books. We're just going to print and digitize some money, and we're just going to buy some stuff, okay, from the banks. So they already had almost $1 trillion from us, the taxpayer, and then the Fed said, we're going to do $3.5 trillion to the banks. Okay, that's what they told us. Small problem with those official numbers. They're complete and total bullcrap. Levy Economics Institute is the one that got the FOIA, and they have the findings. And let me give you the truth of what the Fed did. Between 2008 and 2010, the Fed bailed out the banks. Now, they said they'd give $3.5 trillion. Well, Citigroup, it's almost nationalizing Citigroup. Citigroup got $2.5 trillion. Morgan Stanley got $2 trillion. Merrill Lynch got $1.9 trillion. Bank of America got $1.3 trillion. But that's not all. We gave billions to the Bank of Scotland, Germany, Switzerland, the UK, France, Belgium.
There's an ad. Oh, get the ad out of there, Jack.
Yeah, so well, he's talking about that. So Glenn Beck's talking about the bailout, right? Wall Street's not going to open. And he talked about quantitative easing. That's when the Fed blew up its balance sheet and said, okay, we're going to buy, treasuries and mortgage-backed securities. We're going to provide liquidity to the market. But here's how bad the problem is. All of these banks, they're all tied together. The Fed wasn't just bailing out, our own banks, Citigroup, B of A, and believe me, all of them, were on the hook and taking the money. But they also had to do the same thing for the Royal Bank of Scotland, yep. Societe Generale, and all of these other foreign entities as well. And the thing about it is when they get to the numbers of what it really cost us and how much money the Fed really printed, and you think about what we're talking about today, when I sit there day after day after day after day telling you have no idea what's coming. And we start thinking about the amount of money these guys have printed that they didn't even tell us about. There's a reason why they wanted to hide it for 10 years. Because they didn't want people to know, oh my gosh, look at what we've really done. And Jason, the effect on this, people are going to be wiped out. There's no doubt about it. There are no more bailouts. Listen, they were brilliant. Dodd-Frank was brilliant.
Yeah, Joe.
I didn't know this was the plan. I'll tell you right now, I did not know.
He didn't even get to the worst part, Joe. He didn't even get to the worst part yet, so we can continue on because it gets much worse than where he was at. It's way worse, Joe. Way worse. So, Jack, continue on. We hit an ad, so we're going to keep going with this, man. Joe, man, keep going, Jack.
We gave $3.7 trillion to Japan, $1.4 trillion to the UK, $1.3 trillion to Germany. We bailed the world out to the tune, you want to know why they needed 10 years? To the tune of $29 trillion. They digitized $29 trillion and didn't tell you a damn thing about it. And they gave it to people all over the world. 3.7 trillion to Japan, to the UK, to Germany, separately. 1.4 to UK, 1.3 to Germany. Now, gee, we're trying to figure out why inflation is going through the roof. 1.4 to the UK, they're now reporting the highest inflation in 30 years. 1.3 million to Germany. The producer price inflation jumped in Germany 24.2%, the highest since World War II. You remember my prediction in 2010 when I was questioning this and I asked, is any of this money going overseas? Of course, that was insane to even ask. The reason why I asked is because if we inflate our money, the rest of the world will be hit first with inflation much worse than ours. Much worse than ours. And these cowards all across the world who are politicians won't have the strength or moral character to say, well, I was involved. I politicked for that money, and I wanted that money over here, and America was giving it to us, and so we took it. They're not going to say that. They're going to say America inflated their money, and we have that money as our gold. We have that as our reserve currency. They, because of their lavish lifestyle and living it up, they just printed all of this money, and now we're all screwed. That's what's going to happen. Mark my words, and it's going to happen faster than you think, because there's more news. It's not just the 30 trillion that we know about. It's now verified through FOIA. We can show you the numbers. That's a fact. But that's ancient history. Do you remember when they started giving money in 2019, right before, like 3 months before the pandemic? And I said at the time, there's a crash coming. Something is happening. This is not normal, and we couldn't get anyone to comment on it. No one would say a word. No economist could explain what the banks were doing. And I said, this is the biggest robbery of all time, the biggest redistribution of wealth. We are going to find out. Well, let me tell you in 60 seconds what they did. Now, we're going to have to probably wait 10 years for verification of this. But let me just take them at their word and do the math. If you think $30 trillion is outrageous, you haven't seen anything yet. So, do you remember back in 2019, something started with the banks, and they started giving them emergency cash because there was some kind of sort of fluctuation, and we couldn't figure it out. No economist could. I mean, literally leading economists on CNBC and everything else, they were talking about it, but not a big deal. But they were talking about it, and they were like, we don't know what this is, okay? And I said, they are bailing out the banks. They are transferring wealth, and they're doing it on an epic scale. And it started at $50 billion a day. They were making available, any bank that needed it could get $50 billion to loan overnight, and then you'd pay it back the next day. Then it became, the first night there was such demand, it quickly went up to $150 billion every single night. And you didn't have to pay it back right away. First it was right away, then it was 3 days, then it was a couple of weeks, and then it was, I think, 3 months, and then it became kind of like, do you ever have to pay this back? Then we went into the pandemic. April of 2020, they began issuing loans $1 trillion per week. Officials tell me most likely they don't have to ever pay that back. All these loans, they're not actually nobody's getting the money back. Okay. $1 trillion a week. We know that to be a fact. Now, because of the secrecy of the Fed, we can't verify what I'm going to do, but let's do the math. And this would be insane. I would have never done this if we hadn't have gotten the official numbers from the Fed of what they did in 2008 to 2010, where they digitized $30 trillion and then lied to us and said it was only $5. $30 trillion. That's a fact. The fact is, in April, they said they were going to continue this loan to all of the banks at $1 trillion a week. Well, it's been 95 weeks. That would equate to $95 trillion plus the 30.
Joe, we got a little piece left that we could do on the next segment, but that was supposed to be just a general number there, but now it looks like it's possible they were adding $1 trillion every week, is the speculation by G. Glenn Beck.
Yeah, well, it's not speculation. So let me help. And of course, I've been all over this from the very beginning. We knew in 2019. Remember, Bank of America. We was uncovered an email from Bank of America to the central bank. This was at a time. Remember, they were doing quantitative tightening when this all happened. So when we get back, I'm going to reset what Glenn just talked about, and then we'll finish with it. Patriot Radio News Hour. Don't touch that dial. 800-951-0592, and this really goes a long way. I mean, Jason and I have been telling you, you just don't have any idea the amount of inflation, and it's hard to understand. Like, we talk about it all the time. I mean, we can't unload ships anymore. We have shortages of everything. I mean, everything. I mean, it defies logic until you really understand what the bankers did and have been doing. They've been doing it. It's not like they just did this. That would be one thing. But it's so much worse than that. And this is why it's even going to be worse than I ever even imagined, because I didn't know. We speculated that they were doing this stuff, but now we really know for sure. So we go back to 2019 when they were allegedly, remember the last time they were selling off their balance sheet. Jay Powell last week came out on TV and told, we're going to start tightening and they're going to stop their bond purchases next month. Right, so now their balance sheet now think about this. Their balance sheet got up to $4.5 trillion. Now we thought that was most of the damage. Of course, Glenn Beck just let us know that was a pittance to what they were really doing. They got it down to just below $4 trillion. Now think about it. Now it's almost $9 trillion. So I wonder how bad it really is. But in 2019, when they were allegedly selling these securities, these mortgages, and these treasury notes, and of course I told you about the letter B of A sent to them saying, what are you idiots doing? There's not enough liquidity, and sure enough, the Fed had to reverse course, and as Glenn was saying, every day they're doing these repo loans. And it was almost hilarious because they would come out and say, hey, we're going to do $50 billion a day starting today. And then 3 days later, okay, we're going to do $120 billion starting today. Then another 5 days later, okay, well, we're going to do $150 billion today. And then we're going to also have a 7-day period and a 14-day period and a 28-day, because the rule used to be you had to pay it back the next day. And eventually, it got to $1 trillion a day. By the way, in July of 2020, when gold took out the old all-time high, which was just under $1,900, it happened to coincide with something very devious that the central bank did that month. They stopped reporting it. It just disappeared.
Yep.
From their balance. It was just gone. Nobody knows what happened. Nobody wanted to talk. Remember, Jason, I talked about it.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
We still don't know. And the speculation is, Jason, they've kept on doing this the whole time.
Correct. Exactly. And the scariest part of what I heard Glenn Beck say is these are $1 trillion a week, never expected to be paid back. That's the scary part, Joe. Just throwing it everywhere.
Well, it can't be paid. Now does all of a sudden, doesn't this make a lot more sense now? But remember, he talked about all the banks were getting the money. There wasn't all the countries, everybody was getting it. And now, when we're sitting here and we're talking about this inflation, everybody's got, and it's horrible, and it never ends. It never stops. And now they're talking about this fantasy tightening again, Jason. I'm going to tell you right now, this is when the gold market explodes and the crisis that they've been building up for getting ready to happen. I want to finish. Let's finish with Glenn Beck. Then we got to talk about the executive order that came to light that all of a sudden, the last 24 hours, the Biden administration talking about executive orders about cryptocurrency. This thing is all tied together, Jason.
Absolutely. Only got about a minute and a half left. Go ahead and play the rest of the Glenn Beck, Joe. Jack.
Transitory? Even at 30, transitory inflation? You cannot believe any of these people in Washington. What this means is your children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren are on the hook for trillions of dollars you never got because they went to banks and banks all over the world. We have no idea where this money is going because they won't answer the question. This is why you're seeing today, but 2 days ago, IMF came to El Salvador and said, stop using Bitcoin. Can't use Bitcoin. They're trying to stop all Bitcoin. Yesterday, the Biden administration came out and said cryptocurrency has got to stop. We're going to regulate, basically, we're going to regulate these things to death. Okay, what's your plan? Your plan is a Fed coin because this money is going to be shown to be completely worthless soon.
All right, that's good, Jack. There you go, Joe.
There you go. You better get ready. 800-951-0592. And again, it makes perfect cover here. And I'm going to say this. I've warned you about Bitcoin for a long, long time. I love it. I want to be clear on that. Love it. Wish it could happen. There was no way they were going to let it happen. And again, you've got to go and look overseas. We always do everything last here. Before we do it here, we've got to test it. And where do we test it? Well, we test it somewhere else. Look at Greece. Look at Cyprus. Listen, that's coming here. The day where you're not allowed to take your money out is coming. It's coming. And how do I know it? Because they put it in the law. I mean, really, when you look at Dodd-Frank, that's what Dodd-Frank is. Dodd-Frank isn't about protecting us from the bank. It's the exact opposite. It's actually about trapping us and becoming enslaved to the central bank and the new digital money that's coming. Because they knew when they had to do what they had to do in 08 and 09, right? They knew then, okay, there's no way we can continue on. Because think about what the amount of money that Glenn Beck was talking about. The trillion, we're probably talking hundreds of trillions of dollars by now. Think about how much inflation would have to happen to have all of those dark pool derivatives and all that dark pool money to actually be worth the paper it's printed on. Right?
And Joe, Joe, and can we hit the break? Couple the Dodd-Frank with the Patriot Act. Hey, if you're going to use your Bitcoin, you're a terrorist. Think about how they can couple that together.
Call by Jason once again. This is why he's my partner. He puts it all together. We're going to be back right after the break. Don't touch that dial. 800-951-0592, Patriot Radio News Hour, Joe Jaquint, Jason Walker, and we're talking about the releasing of the Freedom of Information Act. And again, it was supposed to be 2 years, right? And of course, why 2 years? Because they want to protect the banks, right? It was back in the day. Think about this before 2008. It was a huge sign of weakness if a bank had to go to the Fed window. Because you go to the Fed window because you don't got enough money. In other words, hey, I've loaned it all out. I don't have enough of it coming in. And, of course, that would tell you, no problem, sell some of this debt. Well, we can't do that. Well, why not? Well, because we valued it at X. And if we sell it, well, it's going to be a lot less than X. And if that happens, right, well, then all of us are screwed. Because then, the old, what we call mark to market. And the Federal Reserve, they're aware. They're like, oh, yeah, we can't have that. I mean, why would there be a Fed window to begin with? That's preposterous. See, by not having these things, you prevent bubbles. Of course, the Fed will say, oh, no, well, we want stability. See, it's just a short-term problem. In a few weeks, a few months, a few years, a few decades, it'll be okay. That's why we got all these boom and bust cycles. But now we had no idea. No wonder why they went all the way to the Supreme Court. No wonder why they fought so hard. The funny thing is I'm sure, and I don't know, but my guess would be they probably asked for way longer than 10 years. But doesn't that fit now? All of a sudden, we start connecting all the dots. Oh, wait, we have to release it in 2022. Now, all of a sudden, over the weekend, the Biden administration says they're getting ready through executive action to essentially regulate the hell out of Bitcoin, which is what I figured would happen, right? And I've said this all along. It's either going to zero or they're going to regulate it to the point where it defeats the whole premise and the whole purpose of holding it. And Jason, one or the other, and maybe a combination of both. My guess is most of the coins will go out of existence, and there will be a few that survive, but they won't be anything of what they were intended to be.
Yeah, and just think about the weekend that they released this FOIA information, how many distractions to keep you from looking where Glenn Beck went, which is, well, you got championship weekend football, you've got Ukraine building up and World War III talk, you've got the vestiges of the COVID madness still going on, and now you've got Biden and possibly attacking Bitcoin. There's a whole lot of really important things that we
got Joe Rogan, right, and all of that to distract people.
Don't look at the Fed. Just don't look at the Fed. That's exactly what this whole weekend was.
And again, nobody's talking about it. This is it. This explains so much to me. Now I really get it. I thought we were going to have inflation by what I thought they spent. Now all of a sudden, I've got you increase that by what, a factor of 10? Maybe a factor of 100?
Joe, if they reverse course, I've been saying that they'd be buying $700 billion a month. Now, after looking at a trillion a month from what they've been doing for the repo, who knows what those monthly buying numbers would be? They'll admit to a smaller number, right? What is it going to be, 900 billion?
It's impossible. It can't be done. It's not going to be done. This is getting ready. Like I said, very interesting, isn't it, too? Put more pieces together. What was it, a week ago that they released their Fed coin paper? Right? And it's so funny because we've been waiting and wondering, why are they behind? Where is it? What's this? What's that? Of course, remember, they used to deny that they were even doing it. Now it all makes sense. Well, sooner or later, someone's going to find out what we really did. And by the way, we've got to get ready. And to Glenn Beck's point, forget the timeline. It's a lot sooner. I was, hey, maybe we could get to 2030. No, there's not a chance. And you know what? I don't think we make it out of this current president's term before this whole thing blows up. And most people are not going to see it coming, Jason. And again, because of rampant inflation, because gas it's not going to be $4, $5, $6. Can you imagine $6, $7, $8 a gallon? A Big Mac's $20, right? All of these things, they're going to come out and they're going to wipe it all away. The Great Reset, whatever you want to call it. And the money that's sitting in bank accounts is going to be very, very vulnerable because of the rules that they put in place.
Yeah, Joe,
right?
I think they're going to make another attempt, though. It doesn't mean it's going to be a good attempt, but they will reverse course at some point when the markets start to crash, just to show that, hey, we are trying to fix this. It'll be like, I don't know if you ever see, I think it was Jeff Jager, who's the kicker for the Raiders some years ago. It was at the end of a half, and they decided to try a 76-yard field goal. It was never going to go in. It's actually almost physically impossible for a man to actually kick an 80-yard field goal. But they put him on the field, they kicked this ugly duck that sort of just fell off to the side. That's going to be their attempt when they reverse course and try to start buying him.
Yeah, and I think and I agree, Jason. There will be a course reversal. I don't think that we get out of this year without a course reversal into 2023. I think that's when really you're going to see the throes of the inflation just start really kicking in, and the talk of Fed coin and the talk of eliminating banks and all of those things. I think that's what very, very, very likely that we could be seeing here. Final segment. I know what a horrible day. Of course, the internet at 1360's down. You figure it out. Patriot Radio News Hour. We'll be back right after the break. 800-951-0592. Depends on where you look. Gold's up today. It's $17.97, up 12 in New York, up I think like 5 in London. It doesn't matter. $17.97. Silver, I'm going to say it's up. I think in London it may be flat, but up 18 cents, 22.50. The Dow just turned positive. By the way, we'll keep our eye on old Mr. Crude Oil, $87 and change. Natural gas, over $5 here. Normally that's about $2 on the wholesale level, and I think it's going to get worse from there. Friday we ran that special, 2060 on $20 gold, 1 through 9, 2060, 10 or more, 2050. I've got 50 or so, 53, 54, 20 still left. Even though gold's up a dozen, I'm going to run the same deal, same price, 1 through 9, 2060, 10 or more, 2050. You know what you need to do. God, doesn't it really make more sense to why all these countries started adding gold? Right? Because I get it. Right? We're looking just on the stuff we were talking about. Oh, it's so much worse than that. It makes so much sense now. I mean, so many things. All of a sudden, Jason, with the release of this Freedom of Information Act, all of a sudden, all this stuff falling into place. Germany bringing its gold. Germany's had its gold here for almost 100 years. Oh, no, we need it back. Right? All these countries repatriating gold. Then all of these countries, so many. Think about how much gold central banks have been buying, from the big central banks to little central banks. Even countries like Brazil and Thailand and Poland and Hungary, and the list never seems to end, Jason. Now it makes sense, doesn't it?
And how manipulated this whole thing is. These guys that are buying, these countries, these banks that are buying all these billions of thousands of ounces of gold, they're not going to buy it at $2,500 or $3,000. They're going to make sure to buy it at $2,000 or $1,900. They're not going to pay those big prices. And when they buy it, Joe, they're not going to let it want to sit there and do nothing. When this inflation and this crazy market crash happens, they're going to let that thing go. And that's why you have to buy it before the crash.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, this is much bigger than I ever anticipated, because I was stupid me, silly me. You only can deal with the information that's given to you. And when they hide it, we speculated, I speculated that it was worse than what they were saying, but I had no idea it was this big. that it was this bad, that it was this pronounced. I knew it was global. We all knew it was global. But this is something much, much worse. And it just makes sense now, right? All of it adds up. No wonder why we don't have anything. Dude, they've made so much money. It's impossible. Inflation probably would have to go up. I don't even know. 1,000% from here,
right?
To make what they've done feasible. I mean, seriously. I mean, it would have to be that idiotic.
And Joe, it makes you understand why COVID was such a huge deal across the world versus swine flu or SARS, which was a big deal, but it wasn't COVID, right, Joe?
Yeah, well, listen, COVID, what a great cover-up. They gave them a lot of cover for more extend and pretend because they just weren't quite ready yet. But little did we know all those years ago, they knew exactly what their timeline was because they knew how long they had till they had to tell the world the truth. Patriot Radio News Hour. God bless everybody. Pick up that gold.